wanted to kill them. Such fabrications were also spouted by another man who was just a cold-blooded killer. Theodore Robert Bundy, also known as Ted Bundy, was perhaps the most contradictory serial killer who ever lived.
Like I'm some sort of weirdo, because I'm not.
A serial killer who broke the mold in many ways. A man who is estimated to have killed anywhere from 30 to 100 women. A brutal serial killer that told everyone he was a rapist who had to kill in order to stay free. In an interview, he said,
and so he would say, well, this person really isn't interested in killing. Killing isn't the point. Violence isn't the point. What he's interested in is the rape, and the rape is the point. But then you have this messy, situation to deal with where you have this victim who could, report you, or you could get in trouble. So therefore, the killing is necessary simply to perpetuate the ability to perform these rapes. And yet, when he describes, they say, well, how would this person have started out? He's like, well, perhaps as a peeping Tom. And then his first experience would be he sees a woman walking alone down an alley. So he comes up behind her and he clocks her in the back of the head with this piece of wood that he found. Gosh, that doesn't sound like rape to me. That sounds like violence to me. It was very obvious that for him, the violence and the sexual acts that he committed were certainly both giving him satisfaction that he desired, even up to the final acts that he performed down in that sorority house in Florida. Those were acts of violence. He didn't have the opportunity to rape those women. The only thing that really characterizes that crime as sexual at all is that he specifically chose attractive, young female victims. So there was obviously the sexual component to it, but he wasn't having sex with those women. He was murdering them.
Mysteriously, Ted Bundy appeared to be anything but a serial killer. He was a Boy Scout, a prominent member of the Republican Party in the state of Washington. He even volunteered at Seattle, Washington's suicide hotline.
Ted Bundy, who killed dozens of women across the country, also worked on a suicide hotline in Seattle. He also saved the life of a 4-year-old drowning boy. And whether he was taking lives or saving lives, he was feeling powerful. And that's a very important motive among serial killers.
Adding to his mystique, Bundy was a brilliant student, admired by his college professors.
I think one of the most interesting things about Ted Bundy is the image that people have of him. He is seen as some kind of misguided genius. Really not such a bad guy. I mean, after all, he only killed dozens of women across the country, in Washington and Utah and Colorado and Michigan and Florida. And by the way, he was also a rapist. His last victim was a 12-year-old girl in Florida, Kimberly Leach. He murdered her by shoving her face in the mud until she suffocated. I don't see him as a misguided anything. I see him as a monster.
As a serial killer, Bundy had a number of factors working in his favor. He was an ordinary, good-looking guy. A guy who used all the glad-handing skills he learned during his days of associating with politicians.
I think there's a myth that is propagated because Ted Bundy was a charming, handsome guy. It was easy for him to lure his victims. He didn't look like the monster that he was. He was extraordinarily ordinary in his appearance. He looked like the last person you'd suspect, not the first. And that, I think, colored the image that we have of serial killers ever since the 1970s.
It is the myth of the evil serial killer genius. The serial killer genius brilliantly portrayed by Anthony Hopkins in the 1991 movie The Silence of the Lambs. But with Ted Bundy, what appeared to be genius may have been dumb luck more than anything else.
One of the things about Ted Bundy that I think sets him apart, besides the sheer number of women that he killed, was his chutzpah. This was a guy who was very brash in many of the things that he did, and committed crimes that were that took a great deal of risk to perform. In one case, he went to a very popular recreation area, Lake Sammamish, and wore a fake cast on his arm and elicited the help of two different young women to help get a boat onto or off of his automobile, and then actually got them to accompany him to another location where twice in the same day he raped and murdered these two women in the same location. They were both kidnapped from a very public place. Numerous people saw him that day, were able to provide descriptions of him that day, were able to provide a description of his automobile, and yet he wasn't apprehended after that.
Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont, at the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers. The identity of his father was never known, though relatives were suspicious about his grandfather, who was abusive and violent to his mother, Louise. Raised with his grandparents, he believed his mother was really his sister. Indeed, the truth about Bundy's young mom was hidden for the next 20 years. In 1950, Louise and Ted moved to Tacoma, Washington, where she married Johnny Culpepper Bundy. Throughout his childhood and into college, Bundy remained shy and never fit in socially. While attending the University of Washington, he met a vivacious young co-ed, Stephanie Brooks, who later dumped him because of his immaturity and lack of ambition. But Bundy wasn't through with her. In fact, in a macabre fashion, he would never be through with her. In 1968, Bundy changed. He became more ambitious. A man who wanted to be in charge. He rekindled his relationship with Stephanie. Then, just after New Year's 1974, he abruptly broke it off. A few days later, he began his violent attacks against women. Once Bundy began killing, he became an insatiable murderer. His signature was his brutality. All his victims, except the last, were killed by a savage blow to the head. At the same time, all his victims looked like his ex-girlfriend.
Ted Bundy, he chose his victims, I think, because of appearance of his girlfriend. If you look at photographs of his victims, all of them have the long dark hair, and usually it's parted down the middle, and there's a very similar appearance to each one of them, which is very similar appearance to his girlfriend.
Bundy's first known murder victim was a 21-year-old college student, Linda Ann Healy. Bundy snuck into her apartment, knocked her unconscious, wrapped her in a sheet, and carried her out of the apartment. Her skull was found a year later. Now, Bundy's frenzy for rape and murder dominated him completely. For the next year and a half, Bundy murdered at least 27 women as he traveled through Oregon, Colorado, and Utah on a brutal killing spree. Police in each state reported female victims, all young and attractive. He was finally captured in Granger, Utah, after a botched kidnapping. Bundy was sentenced to 15 years. But escaping from jail, he made it to Florida, where he killed at least 3 more times before he was caught and sentenced to death in Florida's electric chair, Old Sparky. On January 24, 1989, the so-called genius of death was himself finally dead. Besides his charming manner and ordinary good looks, one of the main reasons Bundy eluded law enforcement was that he was the first to move out of a local comfort zone. All other serial killers up to this point, from Jack the Ripper to Ed Gein to the Boston Strangler to the Zodiac Killer to the Son of Sam, did their killing in basically a single jurisdictional area. In short, they did not move over great distances. Bundy broke the mold.
Ted was different at the time. He did cover a lot of space in a relatively short period of time, which was kind of unknown at that time. Now it's much more common. We see killers moving at greater distances from their homes or from their point of operation, if you will, to commit a crime because they don't want to be seen in their own area. Some killers, granted, like a comfort zone, they're familiar with the area. But as I said, we're seeing more and more that will go longer distances.
How and why serial killers murdered were becoming ever more a mystery. And therefore, they were increasingly difficult to catch.